Dune director Denis Villeneuve made some concerning comments about the upcoming Dune Part 2 film. He admitted that Zendaya's Chani character is made the main character halfway through the film, and he also said he changed Frank Herbert's novel because he didn't think certain parts were, quote, proper. Let's get into this here. Before we do that, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. This is what Denis Villeneuve had to say to Games Radar. He said, as the movie progresses, there's a shift in the main character, and Chani becomes my reference as point of view. So it's no longer focusing on Paul Atreides, Timothy Chalamet's character. He says it focuses on Zendaya's Chani for part 2. That is a massive, massive red flag. The film should be focused on Paul Atreides. It should be focused on Muad'Dib. It should not be focused on Chani. That's not how Frank Herbert wrote it. Nevertheless, he also shared that he's giving the character of Lady Jessica a larger role in the film. He says, strangely, Jessica is more in the background in the second part of the novel. I thought that was not proper. So he's changing what Frank Herbert wrote because specifically about Lady Jessica because he didn't think it was proper. So he's giving her a larger role in the second part of the film, contrary to what her role was in Frank Herbert's original novel. Where have we heard this before? It sounds very similar to what the Rings of Power people said about how they wanted to write the novel that J.R. Tolkien never wrote. Sounds very similar to that. Nevertheless, he explains, saying she's still Lady Jessica, the main architect of the story. I thought that was a very powerful idea that was not sustained in the book. I made sure that she has the character presence in the second part. So again, he's saying that he didn't believe that Frank Herbert sustained what he wanted to do with Lady Jessica in the book. And so he's ensuring that that is how it is now. Again, writing the book that Frank Herbert never wrote. This sounds like what he's saying there. Zendaya would concur with Denis Villeneuve, saying, what Denny does very well is take the female characters more deeply into consideration. He was really able to build out a strong sense of Chani's own views and life. It wasn't entirely like she's at the will of who she's in love with. I did feel a particular sense of care for what Chani represents in his films. Obviously, I think that is very contrary to what happens in the books. I do think Chani was kind of at the will of Paul Atreides. She can obviously express her disappointment for what Paul does with Princess Irulan, I think is her name, if I remember correctly. And she kind of just has to kind of go along with it. But yeah, she's kind of at the will of what Paul does and his political moves to basically ensure he unites the galaxy under his leadership and everything like that with the marriage to Princess Irulan and the alliance that he forms in order to ensure that his family survives and he is now in control. And Chani doesn't really have any control over that. I mean, she can tell Paul she opposes it, but Paul's like, yeah, well, this is what's happening and this is what we have to do. So it sounds like they're changing that as well. We'll see what happens though. This shouldn't be surprising. Villeneuve is made comments like this in the past. He told the LA Times back in 2021 while promoting the first film. He says, at the very beginning of the creative process, I remember Eric Roth asking me, what is the most important element I should focus as I'm starting to write the first draft? I said, women. There are so many things in the book that are so relevant and so prophetic, but I felt that femininity should be up front. We needed to make sure that Lady Jessica is not an expensive extra. So this is something that he seemingly had in mind from the very get-go. This is what he told the LA Times back in 2021, again, while promoting the first film. And then we know he's inserted wokeness into the first film. He did that infamously by race replacing Chani with Zendaya. And then he race and gender replaced Liet Kynes with actress Sharon Duncan Brewster. Villeneuve's scriptwriter John Spates explained that decision, saying Herbert's novel is to some extent an artifact of its time, and it definitely skews male in ways that don't feel completely contemporary now. Of all the messages in the story, the message brought by Liet Kynes of planetary stewardship, of the preciousness of resources, of the necessity of building bridges to local communities to sustain ourselves going forward, those are modern messages, and it seemed right to modernize the messenger. So they wanted a black woman to play the person delivering that message and clearly explaining that they did it because of wokeness right there. He also told Variety that he thinks the film is relevant because of its various themes, including colonialism. He was asked by Variety, "What is it about Dune that makes it still so relevant today?" And he said, "I would say that it's not still relevant. I think it's more relevant because the thematic that Frank Herbert explored when he wrote the novel in the beginning of the 60s. The impact of colonialism, the exploitation of natural resources, the danger of mixing politics and religion together, the danger of messianic figures, all those are subject as just being more extrapolated today, not extrapolated, just more vibrant and present in our societies. So I think sadly the book's more relevant today than it used to be when it was written." Uh, in a That was obviously cut up on Twitter, and then on YouTube he had a fuller answer, and he said the exploitation of natural resources that are done because of extreme capitalism. I'm talking about extremes right now. He said, then you can see the forces that will oppose will be sacred and linked with religion. And that is a mix that is dangerous and volatile. And that's something the movie is digging into. So he was saying the movie is digging into those themes right there. So he's not opposed to a lot of that stuff, pushing that stuff. Um, Obviously, did it in the casting with Liet Kynes and obviously Chani. And then obviously trying to hammer home some of the themes that he wanted to hit home even more. So that is what he had to say back in 2021 and what he's saying now just recently to promote Dune Part 2. I think these are massive red flags and is definitely concerning on what the final product will look like for Dune Part 2. Let me know what you think about what Denis Villeneuve had to say here. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.